My name is Ian Johnson and I work with IMS Brogan. I'm in the consulting group as a principal. I'll be moderating session 2 of the rapid fire session, and we're hoping to have a lot of fun with this and some questions at the end. So why don't we get started as our kickoff. So, we're going to start off with really touchpad question number 1, and it's really designed to look at your company as a group. So, today, is your organization really focusing on the customers? In your organization, who is your customer? And I know that can be a big question for a lot of companies. It used to be GPs, it used to be payers, it used to be all sorts of different stakeholders, including sometimes the sales reps. But I'll ask that question, in your group today, who is your customer? So let's see what the results are. Gee, that's interesting. Canadians in general at 21%. Patients. It's an interesting fact to see because earlier as we watched all the other presenters, we saw that patients were taking on more of an important role in every presentation. I still see there's a fair bit of I really don't know out there, which is probably what a lot of companies are struggling with. So the next question, in your organization today, is one of your top priorities or objectives to get closer to the patient? And can we go with the touchpad again? 78%. I guess this really goes along the lines with what Jill and Andrew were debating earlier, was just, getting very close to patients, understanding patients' outcomes, putting the patient first. And it looks like most of the organizations in this room are moving down that line. Hang on. Yeah. When we look at ourselves as an industry, who is your biggest competitor, and who is the people that are keeping you away from hitting your revenue targets? Is it a competitor in this room? Is it a provincial government for not listing your products, be it, or federal government, be it PMPRB or CDR? Is it the patient? Are they the ones keeping you from getting your targets? Or is it really your financial team who isn't unloading the resources you need to drive the business forward? It looks like a fairly interesting spread. I noticed finance has come up there very well. I think that's what most people on the marketing and sales side think. If they gave us more money, I could drive that revenue forward. But interestingly, when we look at this, one of the things we often overlook, next slide, I guess, is in most cases, it's the patient. I mean, there are very few disease states where your patient is not the biggest issue. You look at chronic medications in just about every single therapeutic area, and even in antibiotics. In the case of chronic medications, within 12 months, over 50% of the patients have discontinued. What we're trying to figure out as an industry is, we've spent, be it $1.2 or $1.4 billion getting a drug approved. We spend $50 to $60 million a year on sales and marketing to get a drug written. We spend a few dollars understanding how to keep a patient on therapy, yet when we look at it, keeping patients on therapy is the best way to hit our target, and the loss of patients for no reason, 50% discontinuation rates, is really what's keeping us as an industry the farthest away from our targets. So I'm going to start off with this as, a patient journey. Now, some of you may have heard of this, some of you may not have. So, patient journeys, has anyone ever heard of it? Well, it's here now, and it's going to change, in most of the people here, change the way you do your jobs. Just to give you an understanding, there's an awful lot of information coming up over the last year and a half in terms of patient journeys, understanding the patient's role in the area of healthcare. For years, we as an industry had the physician at the center. Then we moved the payer to the center of that spectrum. But what we're beginning to see is that the entire industry, and we heard it in the earlier talk, is really shifting towards patients as the center. So what are we doing to make sure that patients stay at the center? Patient journeys, never heard of it. If you look on the screen, you're seeing that from one end of the country to the other, even Medline is getting on the bandwagon of patient journeys and really understanding what the patient's role is and where they sit within their treatment. Understanding this in the system is going to change the way everyone here does their job. And the thing to keep in mind is that a patient journey is really not the end of the process, and that many companies are thinking that at the end, you've now got the product, you've launched the product, you've got approval, oh, now we need to understand the patient. A patient journey is not the end, but it's rather the precursor to a very solid brand strategy. It starts the process of aligning the organization, be it from the sales rep all the way through to market access, to the data and the insights, and then the tactics needed to keep your patients on therapy. If you start looking at your drugs and the way you market your drugs with the patient in the center, that drives how you're going to segment your market, what type of market you're going to go after, including the targeting of it, how you really want to position your product or your organization separately from other companies. That drives your message, your strategy, and then finally, be it your field force or your MSL rollout. By starting off with the patient, you actually understand how they're going to get to their therapies and all of the challenges they have. And if you can address that, you can address the compliance issue, which is really what's keeping most people and most organizations away from hitting their objectives. Our rapid fire session today is really going to start off with John, who's really going to be, it is John? Jeff, sorry, Jeff. It's going to be starting off with Jeff, who's the Director of Business Development and Licensing at Takeda.